I died the day they chose me. The moment the recruiters came, I knew there was no going back. They landed on the grim streets of Renfield, a grimy industrial town in northern England, like some unstoppable storm. Their armor gleamed under the flickering street lamps, bright, polished, but cold as steel. They didn't talk about glory or honor, only duty. And in the world they lived in, service wasn't a choice. It was the only thing worth living for. I was just one of 30 lads pulled from the chaos of gang wars that tore apart our neighborhood. I remember the last look I got at my home. The soot-covered brick buildings, the smell of burnt oil hanging thick in the damp air, the clang of factory machines that sang me to restless sleep. None of it was pretty, but it was mine. All I'd ever known. All I'd never see again. The transport van rumbled beneath us as we sat in silence, eyes darting nervously between each other and the towering figure standing guard. He was a mountain of a man, clad in deep crimson armor that looked like it had been painted with blood and battle scars. His helmet was shaped like a skull, emotionless and terrifying. We'd heard stories of these angels of death, but nothing prepared us for the sheer force he radiated. It was like he was carved from the night itself, a living legend. "You're not chosen for greatness," he finally said, his voice booming through that mask. "You're raw material. Most of you won't make it. This isn't glory. The servitude. Until death. No promises of glory. No fancy speeches about power. Just cold truth. Serve or die." I looked around at the other lads. Some barely teenagers, faces too old for their years, eyes hardened by the streets. Others, like me, were scarred and battle-hardened from years of turf wars. We had one thing in common, fear. But no one said a word. The journey lasted a week. Time lost all meaning inside the cramped van. We ate once a day, a tasteless paste that filled our stomachs better than anything from the corner shop. We were allowed 2 bathroom breaks under the watchful eyes of servitors, half-man, half-machine slaves who didn't blink or speak. We slept huddled on cold metal benches, shivering under the weight of our own dread. The Space Marine never rested, standing sentinel like a statue of war incarnate. On the 7th day, the van jolted and the doors slid open, flooding us with daylight so harsh it burned our eyes. We were herded out like cattle, blinking against the brightness. The world that greeted us was unlike anything we'd seen. Towering hills rolled into the horizon, their peaks hidden by low clouds. Forests stretched far and wide, real trees, not the steel and concrete we were used to. The air was crisp, too clean, stinging our lungs after breathing in soot for so long. Dominating it all was a fortress carved into the side of the largest hill, a monument to mankind's conquest over nature. "Welcome to your grave," the Space Marine said, finally removing his helmet. His face was pale, crisscrossed with scars, eyes sharp and cold like they could see right through me. His mouth was set in a permanent scowl, but there was a flicker in his gaze, perhaps a hint of remembrance, maybe even regret. "I'm Sergeant Crane," he continued. "From this moment your past is dead. Your names are gone. Your family's forgotten. You exist only to serve the company and through it the crown." Another figure appeared, draped in white robes instead of armor. His head was shaved clean, his face a patchwork of scars and cybernetic implants. A glowing red, I scanned us like a predator. "I'm Apothecary Vaughn," he said flatly. "You will now undergo preliminary examination. Those who pass begin the transformation. Those who fail serve the crown. In other ways, pass or die, succeed or be discarded." We were led through massive iron gates into the fortress's belly. Corridors wide enough for 3 soldiers in full armor. Walls adorned with symbols of war and sacrifice. Servitors shuffled past, their vacant eyes barely registering us. Human servants hurried by, heads bowed in submission. The examination room was clinical and cold. White tiles stained with old blood, instruments lined up like tools of torture. We were ordered to strip. Nakedness was vulnerability in the streets, but here, no one dared resist. The inspections were thorough and humiliating. Every inch of our bodies measured, tested, poked. Blood taken, skin scraped, We were livestock, numbers on a list. 3 boys were taken away, deemed unfit. Relief and shame mixed on their faces. I never saw them again. Afterwards, we were given identical gray robes and led to a dormitory. Rows of narrow cots with thin blankets, no personal effects allowed. Outside, a servitor kept watch. "Sleep," it said in a hollow monotone. "Tomorrow you begin to die." I lay on the cot, the softness strange after a lifetime on concrete. Around me the others shifted. Some wept silently, others stared at the ceiling, lost. No one spoke. What was there to say? We'd been chosen. But for what? To become something not quite human. To die trying? I thought of my gang, the Iron Vipers, a ragtag bunch of misfits who fought for scraps in the shadows. We were brothers, forged in fire. Here we were competitors. Only the strongest would survive. As sleep finally claimed me, a strange calm settled over my mind. I had survived 18 years in Renfield, where most kids didn't see their 10th birthday. I'd killed my first rival at 12, a mistake he made by turning his back. I'd clawed my way up to lieutenant in the Iron Vipers through bloody cunning and cold calculation. If anyone could survive this hell, it was me. I was wrong. I wouldn't survive, because becoming what they wanted meant I had to die first. The alarm shattered the silence before dawn. A brutal, screaming klaxon that jolted us awake like a punch to the gut. There was no grace, no mercy. 5 minutes to empty our bladders in the communal latrines. Then we were herded to the mess hall. The room was cavernous, lit by cold fluorescent lights that bounced off polished steel tables. Space Marines sat at raised platforms, devouring vast portions of food with mechanical precision. The scent of grilled meat and roasted potatoes, real food, not the bland paste we'd been fed, hung in the air. We, the aspirants, were herded to lower tables, where bowls of gray mush awaited us. Nutrient porridge, they called it. Tasted like wet cardboard but filled you up better than a kebab after a night out in Manchester. "Eat up," barked a chapter serf, a scrawny human servant with eyes too tired for his years. 10 minutes. No dawdling. I spooned the paste into my mouth, grimacing. It was bland, but in moments like this, taste was a luxury. Around me, others ate in silence, faces pale beneath their gray robes. Some looked like they were about to hurl, but none dared. The walls were adorned with trophies, decayed animal skulls, rusted weapons, and banners faded from countless battles. Above it all hung the chapter's emblem, a twin-headed lion, its gold wings spread wide, staring down at us like judge and jury. Sergeant Crane entered, and silence fell like a guillotine's blade. "We begin to remake you today," he announced, voice low and grave. "Your bodies are weak, your minds untested. Many of you will fall before the implants. That is by design. Only the worthy will receive the crown's gifts." He didn't elaborate. We knew what that meant. Death was the price for failure. We were led outside to a vast courtyard, ringed by towering stone walls carved with ancient runes and battle honors. The morning air bit at our skin, crisp and cold, our breaths misting as we stood shivering in our thin robes. Crane pointed toward a narrow path winding up the nearest hill, disappearing into thick woods. "Run," he said simply. "Complete the circuit by midday or you won't eat. Fail again tomorrow and you won't eat for 2 days. Fail a third time and you're done." The path stretched before us like a gauntlet. Steep inclines, tangled roots, jagged rocks. None of us had ever run like this before. Not for distance. Not for survival. I laced up my boots, worn leather, scuffed and cracked, and took a deep breath. The clean air burned my lungs, unaccustomed to freedom. We took off, legs pumping, hearts pounding, muscles screaming in protest. The first kilometer spread us out, some sprinting ahead, others stumbling behind. I stayed in the middle, my gang-hardened body holding its own but lungs gasping for mercy. The forest closed in, shadows shifting beneath ancient oaks. Roots snatched at ankles like unseen hands trying to drag us down. Then came the rocky ledges, where one false step meant a 100-foot fall. I swallowed hard and pushed on. Skulls of servitors hovered overhead, their mechanical eyes recording every falter, every gasp. There was no room for weakness. Hours passed, sun climbing mercilessly. Sweat soaked through my gray robe, boots chafing raw skin. My feet bled, but I didn't stop. Couldn't stop. When I finally stumbled back into the courtyard, midday light blazing, only 18 of us remained. The others trickled in, gaunt and broken, some silent, others shaking with exhaustion. That night, one boy never returned. We didn't speak of it, didn't ask questions. He had failed. That was enough. Lying on my cot, muscles burning, I thought of the iron vipers, the blood, the loyalty, the fights. Here, brothers were replaced by rivals. Only the strongest survived. Only the fittest earned the crown. And I was still alive. Barely, but alive. I didn't know then that the run was only the beginning. The true transformation was just around the corner, waiting to strip away everything I thought I was. Day 2 hit like a hammer to the ribs. The morning chill had barely lifted when we were roused again by that merciless klaxon. No time to savor the ache in my legs or the bruises blooming on my skin. Today's run came with a twist. Weighted packs strapped tight to our backs, each loaded with the kind of gear that made every step feel like dragging a stubborn mule uphill. My pack was awkward and bulky, digging into my shoulders through the thin fabric of my robe. I gritted my teeth and adjusted the straps, trying not to look like I was about to collapse in front of the others. The iron vipers had taught me to hide weakness, but this was a whole new level of suffering. As we lined up at the start of the trail, Sergeant Crane's voice cut through the morning fog like a blade. Run. No excuses. No mercy. Only the crown decides who lives. The path was the same, but now every branch snagged at my pack. Every root threatened to unbalance me. My breath came in ragged gasps, lungs burning as the clean mountain air contrasted painfully with the polluted smog I was used to. Somewhere deep inside, a voice whispered, "You're not built for this." But I pushed it down. After all, I'd survived the underbelly of Renfield, where survival meant blood and betrayal, not just the strength of muscle and bone. Halfway up, the pack's weight felt like a lead anchor, dragging me down. My boots slipped on wet stones. I cursed under my breath, trying not to swear loud enough to get reprimanded. The others surged ahead, some sprinting, others shuffling grimly, but I kept my pace steady, slow and brutal like a bad hangover. Near the crest, the forest thinned, revealing jagged cliffs that dropped away into mist. I paused for a breath, heart pounding like a drum in a marching band. The view was breathtaking, but there was no time for admiration. I shoved the thought aside and pressed on. By the time I staggered back to the courtyard, sweat pouring down my face, only 14 of us remained. More than half had failed to make it in time, their faces pale and hollow, eyes empty of hope. That night, the dorm was silent except for the occasional soft sob or the scrape of restless limbs against the cot. I lay awake, muscles screaming, wondering what I had become. The clean air that had burned my lungs all day now felt like a cruel joke. Too pure, too alien. The others whispered rumors, half-heard stories of those who'd been discarded, sent to the servitors or worse. I tried not to think about it, but the fear gnawed at me like a rat in the dark. In the flickering light of a dying candle, I caught my reflection in a shard of broken glass, a face I barely recognized. Pale, scarred, eyes shadowed with exhaustion and something harder, determination. Tomorrow the path would demand more, and I would have to be ready, because in this place, survival wasn't just about strength or speed. It was about shedding the last pieces of the boy I used to be. The crown was coming for me, and I wasn't sure if I'd be ready to meet it. The third day dawned cold and gray, the sky a heavy blanket of clouds that promised rain but delivered only a biting wind. When I pulled on my robe, I noticed the grime and sweat stains from the previous days had fused into the fabric, stubborn as the memories I was trying to bury. Today's challenge was something new. We were to run the circuit clad in primitive armor, clunky plates of worn metal that scraped and pinched in all the wrong places, a poor imitation of the suits the sergeants wore. I slipped into the armor with a mix of frustration and awe. The plates were heavy, cold against my skin, rattling at every movement. My boots, now reinforced with steel toes, felt like they belonged to a giant. A stray strap pinched my neck, and I fought the urge to rip the whole thing off. But Sergeant Crane's cold gaze warned me against any sign of weakness. "Wear it like you were born in it," he said, voice like gravel. "This armor is your future, your shield, your cage." The run began as usual, but the extra weight and stiffness slowed us down, turning each step into a battle of will. The trail, already unforgiving, became a gauntlet of thudding footfalls and clanking metal. Roots snagged on my armor, branches scraped my face, and every breath felt like inhaling shards of ice. Halfway up the mountain, the wind whipped harder, tearing at my robe and rattling the armor plates. I caught a glimpse of a boy ahead, stumbling and swearing under his breath, his face pale and lips blue from the cold. I wanted to call out, offer help, but the training had beaten compassion from us. Survival was solitary. The path narrowed, and I found myself teetering on the edge of a rocky outcrop where one misstep meant plummeting into the void below. My boots were slick with mud, and the armor's bulk made balance a test of nerves. I swallowed hard, tightened my grip on the strap across my chest, and edged forward. At the summit, the rain finally came, cold and relentless. The cold seeped through my armor, chilling me to the bone. The others gathered, faces drawn and wet, but no one spoke. The sergeant's voice cut through the storm. 3 days done. 15 remain. You're getting stronger. But the crown demands more than strength. It demands sacrifice. That night, the dormitory was a symphony of aches and whispered fears. I lay awake, muscles trembling, heart pounding not just from the run but from the knowledge that with each step, I was losing myself. The boy from Renfield was fading, replaced by something sharper, colder, less human. I thought about the iron vipers, their crude tattoos and broken smiles. I thought about the ragged streets and the burnt-out factories. And I wondered, would they recognize me now? Or would I be a ghost, a shadow in their memories? As I drifted into uneasy sleep, a flicker of doubt gnawed at me. Was this transformation a gift or a curse? And when the crown finally claimed me, what would remain of Tiber? Weeks passed, each day a relentless test of flesh and will. The brutal conditioning continued. Combat drills, endless sparring with wooden staves, bare fists pounding against callous skin and armor that felt more like a second skeleton than protection. Sergeant Crane and the other instructors were merciless, their bodies honed by centuries of experience, moving with impossible speed and precision. Every mistake was met with a sharp correction, every hesitation punished. I learned to strike not with anger, but with cold calculation, overwhelming force delivered with ruthless efficiency. Friends were forbidden. Compassion was a weakness to be purged. The other boys became nothing more than obstacles or opponents, rivals to be broken. At night, our bodies ached with bruises and fresh scars, the sting of sweat and blood mingling on torn skin beneath our robes. But it was not just the body that was forged, it was the mind. Hypno-indoctrination sessions plunged us into darkness, strapped into metal chairs with neural interfaces piercing our skulls, flooding our thoughts with visions of ancient battles, unwavering loyalty to the crown, and the endless war against enemies both alien and heretic. The information was overwhelming, a torrent that threatened to drown the boy I once was. Hours felt like minutes, and we emerged drained, minds reshaped piece by piece. Brother Chaplain Mord, a towering figure clad in obsidian armor etched with symbols of death and judgment, preached not of hope or mercy, but of sacrifice and duty. His voice was a thunderclap in the dim chapel, words cutting deeper than any blade. "You think you suffer," he intoned, pacing before us. "You know nothing of suffering. The crown endures eternal torment, sustained by the sacrifice of thousands. Your pain is but a shadow." One evening, as I lay on my cot, fresh bruises blooming like dark flowers across my skin, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in a shard of broken glass. The face staring back was pale, gaunt, eyes burning with a strange fire. The boy from Renfield was gone, replaced by something sharper, colder. Yet beneath it all, A flicker of something stubborn remained. A spark of memory, a whisper of doubt. Was I becoming a weapon or losing myself entirely? The training pressed on, unyielding and unforgiving. By the end of the month, only 10 of us remained. We were no longer boys but something else. Stronger, faster, harder. But the cost was written in every scar, every sleepless night, every shattered hope. And still, the true transformation loomed ahead, waiting to tear us apart and rebuild us anew. The day came when they took me to the apothecary, a sterile chamber deep within the fortress, where cold light glinted off surgical tools arranged like instruments of some dark ritual. The air smelled of antiseptic and old blood, a scent that twisted my stomach into knots. I wasn't just another recruit anymore. I was now a subject for transformation. Apothecary Vaughn, the robed figure with the glowing red eye, presided over the operating table like a grim reaper. His voice was clinical, devoid of empathy. "This is the first of many gifts," he said, holding a gleaming scalpel. "The secondary heart." Stripped and scrubbed, I lay on the cold metal table, the harsh lights blurring into a haze. Needles pierced my veins, pumping drugs that numbed my body but left my mind painfully alert. I was conscious through every incision, every pull and stitch, every violation of my flesh. The pain was a firestorm, unlike anything I'd ever known. I wanted to scream, but the drugs held my voice hostage. I wanted to fade into darkness, but the agony anchored me to a brutal reality. Brother Chaplain Mord stood nearby, chanting liturgies of strength and endurance, his voice a dark comfort and a reminder of why I endured. Hours later, I was wheeled into a dim recovery chamber, where another boy lay, his eyes wide and haunted, reflecting the same trauma I felt. We were broken, unmade, torn apart to be rebuilt as weapons. The secondary heart thudded against my ribs, a foreign and alien presence slowly merging with my own. Weeks crawled by as my body fought to accept the new organ. The pain never fully faded. It shifted and twisted, a constant reminder of the price I paid. Blood was drawn regularly, analyzed with cold precision. Adjustments were made. I existed in a twilight between agony and numbness, a prisoner in my own flesh. Then came the osmodular implant, a small device at the base of the skull that began to reshape my skeleton. Bones thickened, reinforced with ceramic-like deposits. The process was agony magnified, as if my very frame was being torn apart and rebuilt. Skin stretched painfully, muscles tore and rebuilt themselves stronger and faster. One by one, other implants followed. A muscle accelerator in the chest, blood chemistry enhancers, clotting organs that stopped bleeding almost instantly. Each change pushed me further from the boy I'd been and closer to something else. Not all survived. 2 aspirants died when their bodies rejected the brain implant that allowed a space marine to function without sleep. Another was crippled when a toxin-neutralizing organ failed. He was taken away, likely to serve as a servitor, a living tool stripped of mind and will. Through it all, training continued. Our bodies adapted, grew stronger, faster, deadlier. Combat drills became more complex, incorporating real weapons scaled for our growing frames. Hypno-indoctrination intensified, drilling doctrine and obedience deeper into our minds. By the 6th month, only 5 remained. We were no longer boys. We were machines, transhuman warriors forged in blood and steel. But the final trial awaited, a test that would decide if we were worthy to don the sacred power armor and become true battle brothers. And I knew, deep down, that nothing would ever be the same again. The strike cruiser, Vigilant Faith, hummed with cold efficiency as it sliced through the void, carrying us toward our final trial. I sat strapped into the cramped armory bay, the familiar weight of scout armor pressed against my skin, the black carapace implants glowing faintly beneath. Each piece was a promise and a threat, a symbol that I was no longer just a boy from Renfield but a weapon forged for war. Sergeant Crane moved among us, checking seals and fittings with practiced precision. "You'll deploy separately," he said, voice low but unyielding. "Each of you has an extraction point 50 clicks from your drop zone. 3 days to reach it. The planet's life is hostile. Use your wits and your weapons." The mission isn't just survival, it's resource assessment. Failure means death. Another Space Marine approached, clad in the gleaming armor of the Tech Marine Order. He handed me my bolt pistol, its weight substantial even to my enhanced grip. "The Emperor's eyes are upon you," he intoned. "Remember that a Space Marine serves even in death." I nodded, sealing the helmet over my head. The world narrowed to the hiss of life support and the steady rhythmic pulse of the black carapace interface syncing with my nervous system. The drop pod was a metal coffin, cold and claustrophobic, but it was the last thing standing between me and the hostile world below. The launch was violence incarnate. G-forces slammed me into the restraint harness as the pod pierced the atmosphere, the exterior glowing bright with friction. The retro thrusters fired, but not enough to slow the crash completely. The impact shattered my bones against the harness, but the armored gel inside the pod absorbed much of the force, suspending me like some grotesque marionette. Seconds later, explosive bolts detonated. The pod's front section blasted away. I emerged onto alien soil beneath a canopy of massive, ancient trees whose branches blotted out most of the pale blue sun. The air was thick with moisture and decay, rich and alien, a far cry from the clean mountain air of the fortress. I checked my gear. Bolt pistol secure, combat knife strapped to my thigh, data slate glowing softly with navigational coordinates. 48 clicks to the extraction point, 16 clicks a day. A brutal pace even for a Space Marine. 3 hours in, the first attack came, a reptilian predator with too many limbs and eyes, a nightmare come to life. It lunged from the underbrush, jaws snapping. Reflexes honed by months of training took over. The combat knife found its throat before it could close. Black ichor sprayed, sizzling against my armor. I collected samples of its blood, the data slate analyzing the compounds in real time. Every kill, every specimen was a piece of the puzzle the chapter sought. The planet's resources, its secrets. The day dragged on in this brutal rhythm. Movement, observation, combat. By nightfall, I'd covered nearly 20 clicks, the data slate heavy with information. I found shelter among the roots of a gargantuan tree, settling down for a brief rest. Half my brain slept while the other half kept watch, a gift and curse of the catalepsian implant. Dawn brought new challenges. The forest gave way to a vast swamp, bubbling with noxious gases. Sensors warned of toxins, but my implants filtered the air with ease. The mud sucked at my boots, slow and treacherous. From the murky waters rose a monstrous creature, a gelatinous mass of tentacles and corrosive secretions. My bolt pistol barked, mass-reactive shells detonating inside its translucent flesh, but the creature absorbed the damage, wounds sealing almost instantly. For the first time, true fear gripped me. Not the cold dread of failure, but primal raw terror. This was a foe beyond my enhancements. Logic won out. I distracted the creature with gunfire, circling it while conserving ammunition. The maneuver cost me an hour but saved my life. 3 more aspirants crossed my path over the next 2 days. We exchanged nods, silent acknowledgments of shared purpose. Alone yet bound by fate. As I neared the extraction point, a plateau marked by a faint signal, I realized the final trial awaited. The area swarmed with predators, drawn perhaps by the beacon's subtle energy. My ammo was low, 2 clips left, 12 shots, and my combat knife bore the marks of countless battles. My armor had taken hits. Torn plating, damaged seals letting the toxic atmosphere lick at my skin. The fight was brutal and merciless. For 27 minutes, I battled through the gauntlet of alien beasts, relying on every ounce of training and instinct. The last 3 kills came with the cold edge of my knife, steel biting flesh in the dim light. When I finally reached the beacon, Sergeant Crane stood waiting, bolter slung casually at his side. His expression was unreadable. "You're late," he said flatly. I glanced at my chronometer. 13 minutes overdue. "The resistance was heavier than expected," I replied, offering the data slate. He took it, interfacing with his armor systems. After a long moment, he nodded. "Acceptable. Your assessment lacks depth, but it will do." As we walked toward the waiting gunship, I dared a question. How many survived? He didn't look back. 3, including you. The others failed or did not reach their points. 3 out of 5. 3 out of 30. A 90% attrition rate. The price of becoming one of the crown's warriors was steep, paid in blood and broken bodies. And yet I was alive, but barely. The return to the fortress was a blur of sterile lights and whispered orders. Medics moved with practiced efficiency, tending to wounds that felt more like badges than injuries. My torn armor was stripped away, each piece catalogued and sent for repair or salvage, while my body was examined again and again. Blood drawn, scans run, adjustments made. The chapter's apothecaries worked tirelessly, their mechanical eyes cold and unblinking as they ensured the implants held. The secondary heart beat steady, and the skeletal reinforcements remained intact. Pain was constant, but it had become a dull companion, part of the new normal. Then came the ceremony. We 3 survivors stood before the assembled chapter, the great hall vast and echoing, its stone walls carved with centuries of honor and sacrifice. The air was heavy with incense and the weight of history. We knelt, heads bowed, still clad in the bodysuits that interfaced with our armor. The chapter master entered, a towering figure whose armor was a masterpiece of craftsmanship, every plate etched with battles and glory spanning centuries. When he removed his helm, his face was a road map of scars and rebuilt flesh, nobility shining through the harsh lines. You come before us as aspirants, he intoned, voice steady and commanding. But you will rise as scout marines. The transformation is not complete, nor will it be for many years. But you have proven worthy of the next stage in service to the crown. He approached each of us, pressing the pommel of a ceremonial power sword to our bowed heads, a ritual echoing ancient knighthood. No longer are you known by the names of your mortal birth, he declared. You are reborn in service, your pasts erased, your futures forged in duty. When he reached me, the cold steel pressed against my scalp. Rise, brother Jorel. No longer Tiber Jorel of Renfield, lieutenant of the Iron Vipers. Just Jorel, a designation, a weapon forged for war. We were assigned to the 10th Company, the Scout Company, the crucible where neophytes became full battle brothers. Sergeant Tauron, a veteran of 3 centuries, took us under his wing. His face was a map of scars, his left eye replaced by a dull red augmentic that glowed faintly in darkness. Forget who you were, he commanded on our first day. You are no longer street fighters or militia. You are weapons of the crown, and you will learn to kill with precision and certainty. Scout training was different from the brutal conditioning before. We learned stealth, reconnaissance, how to move unseen despite our enhanced forms. The scout pattern bolter became an extension of my arm, lighter, deadlier, unforgiving. We studied ancient doctrines of warfare, strategies honed over millennia. More than that, we learned to function as a unit, subordinating individual will to the needs of the squad, the chapter. The 3 of us were joined by 4 others from earlier cycles, forming a full squad under Sergeant Tauron. We trained, fought, and grew together, our individuality tempered but not extinguished. My first combat deployment came 3 months into training, a system on the sector's edge plagued by orc raiders attacking mining colonies. Our squad was attached to a strike force led by Brother Captain Viros, deployed via drop pod to retake a promethium refinery seized by the enemy. The drop pod slammed into the courtyard, doors blasting open with a roar. Tactical Marines in blue armor poured out first, disciplined and lethal, cutting down the orcs with practiced efficiency. We scouts took up positions behind, on storage tanks overlooking the battlefield. From there, our longer-range bolters could provide covering fire, picking off targets with deadly precision. The stench hit me first, a nauseating mix of fungal decay, sweat, and industrial chemicals, even my enhanced filters struggling against it. Then came the noise, the guttural roars of orcs charging, crude weapons blazing wildly but with devastating effect when they connected. Through my scope, I saw faces twisted by feral delight, snarling and screaming as they fought to the death. My first kill was an orc knob, a massive brute twice the size of its fellows, clad in cobbled armor and wielding a cleaver that could slice through ceramite like paper. I tracked its charge, calculated the lead, and fired 3 rounds in rapid succession. The first 2 penetrated its skull, detonating inside the brain. The third was insurance. The battle raged for 3 hours and 27 minutes. We purged the orcs room by room, corridor by corridor, bolter fire and blades blazing. 347 orc corpses were counted. 2 full battle brothers fell, their gene seed harvested by the apothecary. Brother Kraus lost an arm to an orc chopper, destined for a bionic replacement. According to Sergeant Tauron, I performed adequately, not spectacularly but without major error. I maintained discipline, conserved ammunition, and followed orders. In the Underhive, such a battle would be legend. Here, it was just another small victory in an endless war. And yet, as I cleaned my bolter that night, a question lingered. Was this endless war all there was? The following 2 years passed like a relentless storm, a ceaseless cycle of training, deployment, and endless combat. Each mission sharpened us. Scouts becoming seasoned warriors, warriors becoming legends, or falling in bloody silence. We moved through war zones scattered across the sector, always in support roles, learning the brutal rhythms of battle and the cold calculus of survival. With every deployment, the weight of my armor felt less like a burden and more like a second skin. My body, enhanced beyond recognition, executed maneuvers that once would have been impossible. Reflexes honed to a razor's edge, senses sharpened to pick up the faintest whisper of danger, and a mind programmed for strategy and obedience. The final implants came slowly but surely, the progenoid glands, vital organs that would one day allow me to pass on the chapter's genetic legacy to future generations of warriors. The black carapace interface, a complex network linking my body directly to the power armor, transforming me into a living tank, a walking fortress. The day I was finally issued my power armor was the day Tiber Jorel truly died, if any part of him had survived the brutal transformation. In the armory, the artificers and tech marines performed ancient, sacred rites. Each plate was blessed, anointed with consecrated oils, and carefully mounted on my frame. The process was long, deliberate, a ritual that forged flesh and metal into one. When the helmet was handed to me, I hesitated. Looking into its empty eye sockets, I saw my reflection warped and distorted. A face too perfect, too symmetrical. The scars of my past had been erased, replaced by enhanced bone structure and pale, almost ghostly skin. My eyes burned amber, a side effect of the ocular implants that sharpened my vision beyond human limits. I lifted the helmet and sealed it tight. The hiss of the seal was final, a sound that echoed in my ears like a closing tomb. Autosenses flickered online, flooding my mind with data, environmental readings, tactical overlays, squad status. The world became a mix of harsh reality and cold abstraction. Brother Jorel, the armory master intoned through the helmet's vox. You now bear the full panoply of war granted to the Adeptus Astartes. Treat it as part of your body. Maintain it as your bolter or combat blade. Respect it as you would the chapter's banner. I flexed my gauntlet hands, feeling the armor respond, strength and speed amplified beyond measure. I took a step, then another, adjusting to the sensation of walking inside a metal colossus. Your final trial awaits, the master continued. May the Emperor guide your bolter. The Hall of Truth was a vast, circular chamber deep within the fortress, the place where the final test of loyalty and transformation would be conducted. Statues of chapter heroes lined the walls, their stone faces frozen in eternal vigilance. The floor was inscribed with ancient battle liturgies and the Codex Astartes. In the center stood a pedestal bearing a single item, a bolt pistol of ancient design, its metal worn smooth by countless hands. Chapter Master Vanax presided over the ceremony, accompanied by Brother Chaplain Mordith and Apothecary Vaughn, the trinity who had overseen our transformation from the beginning. Captains and senior officers watched, their armor glinting with honors. Step forward, Brother Jorel, Vanax commanded. I advanced, helmet off, the chamber's cold air prickling my skin. You stand before your chapter as one transformed, Vanax intoned. Body remade, mind indoctrinated, spirit tempered. Yet one truth remains. Apothecary Vaughn stepped forward, holding a data slate. According to our records, you were born in Renfield, Segmentum Pacificus. You rose to lieutenant in the Iron Vipers gang, controlling 3 sectors. Your final mortal act was the assassination of a rival leader, Vex. He looked up, eyes cold and clinical. Is this correct? It is, I said, voice deep and foreign to my ears. Chaplain Mordeth removed his skull helm, revealing a face almost more machine than man. Before you is a bolt pistol loaded with 1 round. Behind you stands Brother Thaddeus, who passed his final trial 3 months ago. I hadn't noticed the figure before. Brother Thaddeus, standing calm and unarmed, expression unreadable. The final truth, Mordeth said, voice like a dirge, is that to complete your transformation, one of you must fall. You will face each other, and only one will stand. Understanding crashed over me like a tidal wave. This was the ultimate test, a kill or be killed trial to sever the last ties to mortality. I took the pistol, its weight heavy in my gauntlet hand. Turning, I faced Thaddeus. His eyes met mine, calm and resolute. 1,000 thoughts flashed. Defy the order, fire wide, turn the weapon on myself. But they were echoes of a past I no longer possessed. I raised the pistol, aimed, and fired. The report echoed through the chamber. Thaddeus stood for a heartbeat, blood leaking from his forehead, then collapsed with a heavy crash. I lowered the weapon, turning back to the chapter master. Vanax nodded. The flesh is weak, but the spirit endures. You have severed your mortal tie. You are now truly Astartes. Apothecary Vaughn moved to harvest the precious progenoid glands. Nothing was wasted. Even in death, a space marine served the chapter. Chaplain Mordetha's voice lingered. Brother Thaddeus was born Vexgarnon of Renfield, the rival you once killed. The Emperor's design is beyond mortal understanding. I felt no shock. No prive. Only the cold silence of the weapon I had become. The next deployment awaited. The war never ends. Back in the armory, the final rituals began. Each piece of my power armor was once again anointed, blessed with sacred oils, inscribed with prayers older than most civilizations. The weight of the bolter in my hands was no longer foreign but an extension of myself, a promise of destruction and protection in equal measure. Assigned to the 5th Company under Captain Helios, I was now part of the chapter's spearhead, the tip of the crown's wrath. Our mission, to repel the Grimscar invasion in the Thaxos system. Orcs had overrun mining colonies, and we were the hammer to shatter their grip. That night, as I meticulously cleaned my bolter, Sergeant Terrentus approached. His scarred face was a map of countless battles, his red augmentic eye gleaming faintly in the dim barracks light. The first deployment is the hardest, he said without preamble. Not because of the fighting, but because it's when you truly understand what you've become. I looked up, hands never ceasing their ritual. I understand my purpose, Sergeant. He shook his head slowly. No. You understand your function. Purpose comes later if it comes at all. Function is what you do. Purpose is why you do it. He settled beside me, voice dropping to a near whisper. I found my answer in a small, forgotten corner of a hive world. We were sent to quell a worker uprising, a simple mission beneath our skill. But the locals feared us as much as the rebels. One night, I found a family hiding, parents and 3 children, terrified of both sides. His eyes searched mine. The father stood before them, arms spread, trying to shield them from bullets and bombs. No defiance, only raw, desperate love. I nodded slowly, understanding dawning. That's who we protect, he said. Not some distant emperor or the abstract Imperium. Humanity, all its flaws and failures. That is purpose. The deployment to Thaxos 3 came at dawn. We boarded the strike cruiser Vigilant Faith, moving as one deadly organism. The journey through the warp would take 17 days. A time for preparation, prayer, and steel sharpening. In my meditation cell, kneeling before the small shrine to the Emperor, I contemplated Sergeant Terrentus' words. Purpose, something deeper than orders or survival. A faint echo of the boy I once was stirred within me, fragile but persistent. Outside, 2 chapter serfs whispered nearby, their voices low and tinged with fear and respect. Another batch of new ones, one said, faces like stone. Remember when we were taken from Hive Primus? Thought they'd save us. They are what they need to be, the other replied. Angels of death. Without them, the Imperium would have fallen millennia ago. But what did they lose? The first murmured. The human part. The soul. The words lingered, unwelcome and haunting. I pushed the doubts aside. The coming battle would demand every ounce of strength, every fragment of conviction. As vigilant faith entered the warp, its Geller field holding back the horrors beyond, I joined my squad for the tactical briefing. The purity of combat awaited, sharp, brutal, and unyielding. I was Brother Jorel, Scout Marine of the 5th Company, a weapon forged from flesh and steel, remade in the Emperor's image. The boy from Renfield was gone, but the war, the endless, merciless war, was just beginning. And somewhere deep beneath the armor, a faint spark of something like hope flickered, waiting for the moment it could ignite. The next chapter awaits.